So, Tim, I think we need a viral moment on this podcast. We need something to go viral. And guess what? It's not pharmacy. Because I looked at our numbers for last week's podcast when we talked about Walmart and Amazon getting going in pharmacy. And no, it's not pharmacy. So,
People don't want to hear us talk about pharmacies for some reason.
so what's the viral moment? Here are the four certain viral, guaranteed to get a viral moment if you are one of these four. Okay. And here's my four on social media. So we're talking like Instagram or TikTok. Four surefire viral ways. One of them, obviously, your celebrity. Okay. Everyone wants to hear about your celebrity, stardom, whatever you do. Number two, you're a pretty girl. There's a lot of freaking freaks out there, man. There's a lot of creepers out there. I don't get it. I don't understand it. I'm just translating the information. Number three, babies. You got a baby in a video that's adorable, it's going to take off. And number
Everybody loves
four,
babies.
pets. You got like a dog, a puppy, that's going to take off. So
That's true. Pets are crazy. What about if it bleeds, it leads? What about that?
if it,
Remember that old saying?
yeah, maybe, I just think, we don't cross off any of those boxes, Tim. I do have a couple dogs. I could bring one of them on, but I don't know. I don't know if that's going to guarantee a viral moment.
I have no pets. I travel too much for pets. We go to these shows all the time. We're constantly on the road. I feel like I'm like the Rolling Stones on tour sometimes, living out of hotel rooms. You just got back, right? From one?
Yeah, I was in New Orleans. I thought Avocado Man was going to be our viral moment. I really did. I thought this guy was going to really shoot us off into out of the stratosphere. But yeah, I was just in New Orleans, first time back in a while. Everything's still there. Everything is still New Orleans, so that's good to report. But yeah,
Yeah.
I was at the International Dairy, Deli, and Bakery Association's annual meeting, and boy, it was busy. There was a lot of people there. There were a lot of exhibitors there. I believe they set a record for the number of exhibitors, for sure. I don't know if they came out with the attendance numbers yet, but the show floor was packed. There was a lot of action going on. One of the things that was very big. Well, I'll go over a couple of things. One is protein. Protein is just huge right now in supermarket retail, and they say it's not just a fad. It's not something that's going to go away in a couple of years. This is something that people want, and they're going to continue to want in their lives. It has really revigorated yogurt. I guess Greek yogurt is now starting to put protein in everything, and they have received a second life. I always thought Greek yogurt kind of tastes like sour cream. Have you ever had Greek yogurt, Tim?
I have had Greek yogurt. I love the Greek yogurt. I have to take a break from Greek yogurt from time to time. It's just too thick though. Like there's something about it that it's like after a while I'm like enough already.
It's very thick. I just can't get into it. My kids do. My kids really enjoy it. And, my kids are also on the protein kick right now, at least two out of the three, because they're in sports. They're trying to gain muscle, build muscle mass,
Trying to beef up.
trying to beef up. I tell my youngest, he's 14. I'm like, dude, DNA is not on your side here because I could not build muscle to save my life. It's just your metabolism is too high, but he wants to eat everything protein. So the thing with protein is the taste. It's hard to get things. I can just go off of what my kids are saying. They have a hard time finding stuff that's loaded in protein that tastes good. But from what I saw on the show floor, it seems like they're really working on that. And it's like I said, it's revitalizing dairy, it's revitalizing Greek yogurt. So that's one of the things that I saw that was huge on the show floor. And here's the other thing. So as a grocery retailer, they're saying that you need to create entire sections of your grocery store all about protein, like a protein section. That's how big protein is right now.
Yeah, no, people well and I think I might be wrong here because I'm not the most health conscious individual here. I try to do what I can. But I know that that's like there's a big push for protein with these with folks who are on the GLP-1 drugs
Yes,
because
yes.
I guess they need the protein because they don't have the sugar anymore.
Yes, yes, that was another connection as well that was made during the show. Also, there's this there was like a futuristic kind of concept plan for grocers where they can set up an entire protein section that includes a cooler for your dairy, another cooler for your deli items, some regular shelving units for your dry goods that have protein, and this would all be a section that would have a kiosk at the beginning. You can order or do whatever you want as far as you can punch up some recipes that might be able to go well, but it would be one big long section that you can essentially walk through. It's like a convenience store. It's like you can walk through and get your dry goods, your deli, your dairy products, all that are filled with protein. So I thought that was a very interesting rendering that they showed, and it sounds like something that is could be what we could see on the landscape here in the not so distant future.
Yeah, well, I know that grocers and CPG companies are all trying to sort of get on the GLP-1 train right now because they see where things are going. So there has been an effort, and I'm trying to remember exactly what the details of the story were, but I wrote a story a little while back about some different grocers and companies that are trying to produce products now that sort of, accommodate folks who are going through the sort of the GLP-1 process, right? Because there's certain
Yeah,
things that
yeah.
you can't just take the drug and then you're done with it. You got to still do a lot of the work.
Still do a lot of the work. So protein was one of the big things. The other big thing was prepared meals that you can take home and put in the microwave and have your meal. A lot of the younger generation shoppers, they don't have a lot of time in their hands. They're going into a grocery store and they're buying what they need for that day, and they're going home and they're making a meal. They're not interested in putting an hour into preparing the meal. They
Right.
want it already there and ready to go.
They got TikToks to make. They can't be bothered.
Right. That's right. And they can make TikToks about their prepared meals that they're
Right.
buying and they're eating.
Right. Right. And then they make money off of the TikToks and then they can buy more prepared meals. It's a vicious cycle.
So obviously, those are things that we're going to see more of on the grocery store floor. But let's get to the meat counter, the meat of the matter. And today's meat counter special price item, Aldi. Aldi, our friend Aldi, our buddy Aldi, they're facing some legal trouble. And Tim, I know you've been covering the
Yeah,
story.
no, I've still got and I'm gonna show this off every time I can because it's sitting right next to my desk here. I've got the Aldi truck.
Yeah,
I've
they're
got
they're
all the
trucking
Aldi
they're
merch.
trucking into the court system here.
Well, it seems like they did they rip off a company when they produced this? I mean, this looks very similar to Legos, right?
Well, let's not get them in more trouble, Tim.
They're gonna
Let's
they're gonna be in some more trouble. And I wore my Bucky's t-shirt today because I knew that we were gonna be recording.
Bucky's, who is funny because they have also been involved in lawsuits in the past regarding their logo
Exactly.
and
Right.
packaging.
That's why I wore it. Tell me about that. I haven't written that much about it, but I know that they're pretty litigious. Like they
Yes,
stay pretty close, keep a close eye on anybody using their logo or replicating it or anything like that, as is Trader Joe's, the cousin of Aldi,
yes. And
owned by
a lot of
Aldi
people,
Nord.
is that a beaver? Yeah, it's a beaver, right? It's not an otter, it's a beaver, right?
It's a beaver. Yeah.
A lot of people they like to market the beaver or something that looks like the beaver.
Yeah. Well, I think that there have been several companies that have done like something ease, right? So like like Foxy's or things like that. That's not a real example, but that it's not even just the beaver image. It's anything with dash EE apostrophe S, like Bobby's or Danny's. You can't do that. That's
Not
Bucky's
with
now,
Bucky's around.
right? Not with Bucky's around. And
So what's
and
with
I
Aldi?
Yeah, with all I find it so interesting because similar to Bucky's, Trader Joe's is very litigious. They file a lot of lawsuits, anybody using their logo or their brand or anything like that. And maybe not a lot of people know this, but Aldi Nord and Aldi Süd, these are two different companies. Aldi is out of Germany, and it was started by two brothers, and they got into an argument over whether or not to sell cigarettes. It's my understanding that the question didn't have anything to do with whether or not cigarettes should or should not be sold because they're safe or not, but it was over whether or not it would attract a criminal element to the store. I believe that's what it was. I might be wrong. Leave your comments for us. But nevertheless, these are two separate companies, but they share a lot of the same, like, kind of supply chain resources and stuff like that. They're still connected, but it's interesting because, Trader Joe's, which is run by Aldi Nord, and Aldi Nord runs a bunch of the actual Aldi stores, but not in the US. In the US, it's Aldi Sued. So Aldi Sued has been sued, actually. There's a little wordplay for you. By Mondelez, which is the same company that produces Oreos and Wheat Thins and a bunch of other common products that you see. I'm trying to find my list here. I'm forgetting exactly who they what they produce, but yeah, Wheat Thins, Ritz crackers, a lot of these kinds of common name brand packaged goods that you see, and they filed a
They
lot.
bought out Nabisco, right? They bought out Nabisco, so they have a
Yeah,
lot of the Nabisco products.
yeah, they have a lot of these common products, and they sued Aldi. They filed a suit. I believe it was last week that the lawsuit was filed. We published a story on Friday about it, basically saying that that they have nearly identical packaging for a lot of these products. Like if you look at the Oreos and the Wheat Thins and some of the other products, side by side, which our story that we published last week has these sort of side by side comparisons. They look very similar. But the real question, I think, in the courts, at least historically, I've been learning more about these lawsuits. And in the past, the big question was, did you confuse anybody? Is this confusing? Are people buying these, Oreo knockoffs and believing that they're Oreos? And it's my understanding that that's changing now, that courts, not necessarily in the US, but in the UK and Australia, particularly, both of which have companies that have sued Aldi and won. They won on other arguments. Basically, those arguments being that that it gives Aldi an unfair advantage and so forth, that essentially they're showing that Aldi, even though someone might not necessarily be confused by it, that essentially, like when Oreo puts out a marketing campaign and they spend, tens of millions, if not more, dollars marketing this product, that Aldi's essentially riding their coattails and they're not doing any marketing at all. So they're kind of riding the coattails of the popularity of this product. And is there a value to that? Mondelez makes this argument, and they're also, and this is something that's I think relatively new in these kinds of lawsuits. They're seeking damages as well. It's not just, hey, cease and desist, take all the stuff off the shelves and change your labels. It's, you owe us now, and it makes me wonder if more of these lawsuits are gonna come about as a result of this, especially if Mondelez wins.
Let's talk about the packaging a little bit. You mentioned they do look strikingly similar. And private label, they're at a point now where they don't need to ride anyone's coattails. I mean, private label can stand on its own. So
Right.
I guess I'm trying to figure out, Aldi's strategy here as far as what they were trying to do.
Well, one of the questions in my mind that I would really like to try to figure out if I can, the rise and the popularity of private label, I wonder if it is resulting in an increase in the number of lawsuits like this. Right? Because these private label brands are really giving the national brands a run for their money at this point. It's not just like a box of cereal that says cereal on it anymore, and it's a white box with the word cereal. Remember those
Right,
private
right.
label? They used to be so boring, and there was just nothing to them, and it should have said, like cereal. You should have made better life decisions or something, right? Because you had to buy the cheapo brand, and now like there's this whole kind of culture around these cheaper private label products. They call it dupe culture. And speaking of TikTok, there are a lot of folks out there that like to make these videos and talk about what a great deal they got, on some off-brand gummies or something that they bought and they paid half the price, if not less. And I think that CPG companies right now are really kind of on the ropes and sort of, they keep raising their prices. They talk about shrinkflation where they reduce the size of the candy bar that you used to pay, two
Yes.
bucks for, and now you pay $3 for it, and it's smaller than it used to be. Private label companies are like, hey, we'll sell you a candy bar for $1 that's twice as big. No problem at all. So it makes it much harder for these CPG companies to, essentially gouge customers.
And let's talk about private label branding because, you brought that up. Back in the 70s, early 80s, we're old enough to remember this stuff. I remember we had a no frills store. And like you said, the packaging was like a stenciled, they would stencil the name of the product, like spaghetti would be stenciled on. And like there was like a dark green bar and black bar that went below it. It was very, very, very plain.
Yeah.
But now the branding has been it's so extravagant now. It requires a whole staff of like 100 people to be like, all right, what's our design? What's our strategy? What's our go-to? And it really is quite fascinating to see the leap that private label has taken in regards to marketing. But that just goes back to my point. I mean, these products can stand on their own.
Yeah.
Why do they need to continue, to really ruffle the feathers of, the big boys, so to speak?
Yeah. Well, and it's so interesting. Like this story is fascinating to me because of Aldi and Trader Joe's and how different they are, and how Aldi has this model where they essentially take popular products, replicate them, make packaging that looks just like the packaging. Certainly, they test these foods and try to make them taste as much like an Oreo as possible or a wheat thin as possible. So you feel like you're getting the same thing for half the price. Trader Joe's takes a completely different approach to where all of the stuff that they make, I mean, like, it's interesting, right? Because Aldi, it's like 90% or so of the products that Aldi carries is private label, but it's under these like sort of off-brand brands. Like I'm trying to even think of any of the names. Like Costco, it's Kirkland, right?
Right.
There's no
Yep.
Costco brand. Everything's Kirkland and Costco. Well,
Yes.
Aldi's kind of similar in that like there's no Aldi. Like when you go to Aldi, it's not like you buy Aldi coffee. You don't buy Aldi cereal or Aldi chips. It's always some random kind of brand that you've never heard of that you kind of forget about. With Trader Joe's, everything says Trader Joe's on it. Like they really milk the or try to get their brand sort of more recognition by putting their name on everything. And if you try to copy them, then they'll sue you. So it's like a very opposite approach. I think you're right. I think that for a lot of people, they don't really care. It's not like they're going to Aldi to try to buy Oreos because think, oh, I can go get cheap Oreos. I think they just go to the store mainly and say, hey, I'm going to get some cookies, right?
Right. And here's the other thing I like to add to my argument. Aldi has such a huge social media following, and you can use that as a marketing tool for your private label products, which I'm sure they do. And that's just another way that they can, separate themselves from, the CPGs. So it's like, why are we going there? Why are we messing with a possible, court case?
Right, right. I mean, and that's a big question. And it wouldn't surprise me if moving forward at some point, especially if they lose this case, you start seeing some real change at Aldi because they've got to do a sort of a cost benefit analysis here at some point. Is this worth it? Especially if we're spending millions of dollars in legal fees and fighting these cases. And, if Mondelez wins, there are going to be 10 more just like it coming up right behind him. I mean, Lego, anybody. Like, I think they even, like, sort of have products that look like Girl Scout cookies and stuff. Like, they're sort of shameless in who they're willing to sort of like like they'll even rip off the Girl Scouts. I'm gonna get sued for saying that, but it's like they really don't care. So like it wouldn't surprise me if moving forward they do get to a point where they say we don't really need this so much. I don't think people are going to stop shopping at Aldi because they don't. If they went back to the white box with just the word cereal on it, yeah, people might go away from that, move away from that. But like if you just change the design on the side of the box and say cereal and or say have a picture of a cookie that looks kind of like an Oreo, but everything else is different. I don't think that people are going to not go to Aldi because of that. I think people go to Aldi because of the discounts.
You need to be yourself, Aldi. Just be yourself. Just be
Right.
yourself. You have the fanatical fan base. You have your merch drop that you have every quarter or so. You have plenty of things, let alone cheap prices. You have plenty of things to bring customers into the store. So
Yeah.
here's my paper or plastic for you. And it's pretty obvious. And we've kind of answered this already, but do you see Aldi succeeding in this lawsuit? And also, do you see them also having to really pay up here? It's not just like you said, it's not just a cease and desist kind of thing.
Right. These are all very good questions. It's hard to say because the recent cases that Aldi has lost were not in the US. These were courts in the UK and Australia. And so, how is a U.S. court gonna see things differently? Maybe they won't, maybe they will. I kind of tend to think that maybe opinions are starting to change on what constitutes success or failure if you kind of, piggyback on somebody else's product design, that it doesn't necessarily have to be like, this argument of like, are you confusing people or not, versus are you riding their coattails and just making a bunch of sales based on the marketing that they did that you didn't do, right? If they start taking those things into consideration, the way other courts have, then Aldi's got itself a little bit of a problem. But I think that they'll survive even if they have to change a lot of their packaging.
Oh, there's no doubt that they're going to survive this, but I do think that they're going to have to pay up. I just, again, you can look at the story because with your story, you have a picture of the two products on supermarketnews.com. They look so much alike. I do think that they do create some shopper confusion. Does it
Oh, they
lead?
absolutely do it. I mean,
Yeah,
there's no doubt they send it to, this is no accident, right?
yeah.
I think you'd have to be pretty dumb to be confused by it. But the thing about it is, Aldi does sell name brand products too. Like you can buy Coca-Cola at Aldi. You can buy some things at Aldi. So I could see how there could be a little bit of confusion, but like, I don't know,
Does it
man.
lead
Like,
to a purchase? I don't know. Does it lead to like millions of dollars in purchases because of it? I don't know either. But like you said earlier, I do think that this is going to change the way Aldi markets and brands their private label, I think.
Yeah. Yeah. No, no, I completely agree with that. I think that it's just kind of a matter of time before, courts start ruling in favor of these companies that are filing lawsuits. And that would be a major sea change here. So Aldi's going to have to make some changes, but it's not just all the other companies do this as well. So, this could have like some pretty widespread ramifications for the industry, I think.
All he has to really do, Tim, is put a little puppy on their label. That's all they need to do.
Or a
Or a
celebrity
celebrity.
puppy.
A celebrity puppy, even better. So
Yeah,
that's all they need to do. I mean, they just need to listen to us and say, hey, we'll put a puppy on our labels and everyone's going to be drawn to our products.
that's right.
All right. He is Timothy Inkelbarger. I am Bill Wilson. Have a great rest of your week and go to Bucky's. I wish I could go to Bucky's. I'm living for
Well,
the
you'll be
day.
able to soon. There's one opening in Wisconsin.
I know, but it's like not for like another year or so. I
Yeah, I
can't wait.
know. I know. You have to buy your beaver nuggets on the black market until then.
I know. I know. Or I can settle for a private label beaver nuggets. How about that?
Right.
All right, guys. Have a great rest of your week, and we will see you next time.